Let's explore and scrutinize together as we unlock the mind of today's guest to provide you with inspiration and tangible takeaways that you can choose to apply in your life. Today's guest is Jennifer Litomisky, and Jennifer is the CEO of the Ronald McDonald House in Detroit. And welcome, Jennifer.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, thank you. And there's really a lot I want to cover today with you about your personal story, about working in a nonprofit and running a charity. And one thing that interests me the more I look at charities is kind of how competitive it is. Every, or at least nearly every charity is definitely a worthy cause, but there's a finite of amount of dollars for you guys to go after. What are some innovative ways you go after those dollars?
Well, one of the things that we've been focusing on the last 7 years is getting into major campaigns to expand our programs. The very first expansion campaign that we had, or capital campaign that we had, was to rebuild the old house to the new house. We have 26 bedrooms now, 25,000 square feet, where we were 20 bedrooms and about 12,000 square feet before. And so that was the very first campaign when the DMC, the Detroit Medical Center, wanted us to move into a new location. So that $3.2 million was the very first launch of a creative way to raise funds, because we had to have a location. They were building the new tower. And we did all kinds of creative things to raise funds, whether it was room naming, area, space naming, foundations gave towards the specific areas. It was a very good way to do it. Very kind of normal way to do it.
Right.
But the second campaign started with the family room up in the fourth floor of the Children's Hospital. And that second campaign was $1 million campaign. And we actually have a space on the fourth floor of the Children's Hospital. So if families don't stay overnight at the Ronald McDonald House, they have a kind of a respite place.
Nice.
And that was the second campaign. But the third campaign is the one I'm most proud of at this point. We are actually launching a new shuttle van service to expand our services, not just with Children's Hospital families, but families in our community. So all over Corwell, which was the old Beaumont, St. Joe's, Ascension. We're thinking about even Henry Ford. So any place that has a pediatric program now, we will be able to help those families with an overnight stay through this shuttle van service. And that's another $2.5 million campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap one.
Not a cheap one, but it's part of a three-pronged campaign. So we're finding in this economy that families are having a harder time with a $10 per night stay. The true cost is about $150. We used to charge people $10. We don't anymore.
Okay.
We took that away. So of course we have to figure out how to find that funding for these families. So part of the campaign is underwriting family stays. And another part is, it's been 7 years since we rebuilt that house, and it's time to upgrade those rooms.
Sure.
So yeah, we're excited for the 2.5 campaign. It's really, I want to say it's one of my bucket list things to probably ride in the sunset on, to see that we're serving more families in our community.
Right. And now the Ronald McDonald House, for our listeners who may or may not know that much about the charity, I'm sure, and before I got to know quite a bit about the charity the past few years, the name Ronald McDonald House, surely it's completely funded by McDonald's, right? You don't have to do much fundraising.
I love it, because I was just talking to one of my new staff, our new director of operations, about how difficult to maneuver that situation is. I mean, you go and you're giving somebody a tour and they're like, oh, well, this is lovely and you're funded by McDonald's. So we have to be real careful. I mean, we are funded about 30% by McDonald's, whether it's roundup at the stores or putting the coins in for your change into the boxes that goes back to the house. Our owner operators do different programs. Like this year, I don't know if you remember the Shamrock Shake sales. Quarter from every sale went back to the houses in the state. It was a nice chunk of change, but it's about 30%. And if we're a $1.3 million budget, that we still need to find that other 70%, and that comes from our community donors.
Right. And the other thing, going more into the charity, it kind of not surprised me a little bit. A lot of companies are attached to a charity and they kind of formulate it. But really, the formation of the Ronald McDonald House had very little to do with McDonald's originally, because I was reading that your founder, Dr. Audrey Evans, she was raising money for a house to be near Philadelphia Hospital. and her story, not to go on a big sidetrack, is an interesting story in itself. I mean, she died last year, 97. Without going massively into her story, I mean, she was the mother of neuroblastoma, helped reduce mortality rates in kids for that by 50%. And she just wanted families to be able to stay next to those sick kids.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong in any of these stories.
Nope, so far so good.
But it was in Philadelphia. The owner of the Philadelphia Eagles was donating $100,000 because he had a player who had a kid who was involved.
Fred Hill.
Yeah, and then she needed like $130,000 for this house.
Yeah.
So she went to a player. Was it a player?
Yes,
that was
Fred Hill.
Fred Hill, and said, "Hey, can you help out with this?" And he had been doing some ads for McDonald's, correct? And so then the question got given to the regional manager, was it Ed Rinsey? Something like that. And he said, "Yeah, we'll give you this extra $30,000. Just call it the Ronald McDonald House." I don't think it was particularly like a massive marketing campaign. But what it's turned into is, like you say, everyone assumes that they completely fund it. It's become their trademark, but it was a bit of genius on Ed's part to kind of do that. And I know that they still support it.
It's amazing. The Philadelphia house is our mothership. So, and it's a beautiful place. And Fred Hill, and a little more to the story is actually the player had a daughter in the hospital, and he and his wife were separated. And so they were both finding a hard time getting from their schedules, a major football player for Philadelphia Eagles and the wife, trying to figure out how they could stay closer to their child. So this all, serendipity, right? I mean, here we are, and, we have a player, a Philadelphia Eagle. We have Dr. Evans, who's looking for something. We have McDonald's, who's saying yes, and it all came together. And I mean, really terrific story.
So how did it jump from, and I want to talk about her story as well a bit more, but how did it jump from one house into Philadelphia to let's do this in other cities?
I don't know the specifics of it. I know we were the 10th house built in the United States. And I know that it just went, Dr. Evans with all of her promotion and McDonald's, and it was just a perfect combination of the need. And unfortunately, I people ask me about occupancy, and I hate that question because, if I say, "Oh, we're filled all the time and we have people waiting," that just means there's more sick children out there. But I'm glad we're here, right? So, I mean, even the fact that I'm doing an expansion program to get the house utilized is something that's heartbreaking on many levels, but thank God we're there.
Yeah. And it's your 50th year this year, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Big celebrations planned?
Well, we're thinking about next year doing something big. I have a brand new development and marketing director who's filled with a lot of ideas, and I'm really excited about it. We might do something in our garden, a red shrew brew or something like that.
There you go.
Yeah. Beer and barbecue.
I'm in.
All right.
Now, and you're in a lot of countries as well. I was reading you're in Ukraine, obviously. It's a challenging one right now. And how many countries are you in? Do you know?
We're in every country, I believe. I think there was one. I know the pandemic set it back. During COVID, we actually, the global office actually built 2 Caremobiles for Ukraine, which I think is truly an amazing thing. A Caremobile is a mobile health unit. Okay. And they actually funded 2 Caremobiles for that vicinity. And I think that's probably one of the most amazing things our global office has done, and many things, but that's really was very generous of them. These rigs cost about $500,000. So it was $1 million donation plus all of the medical services. Yeah. A really great donation.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of these interviews, I like to kind of have a theme and kind of go through. But with your one, I just kind of feel like I want to jump around because there's not many areas here. So I'm going to go back now to you in college.
Okay.
We're going back. Not that far back.
Oh, okay.
But you were at Eastern Michigan and you played a lot of sports.
Yes.
And, that competitive drive was in you from an early age?
From an early age. I had a cousin who was a couple years older than me, and he was the guy who taught me not to run like a girl. And it's my favorite story. He's like, "Oh, you run like a girl, you hit like a girl, you shoot like a girl." So he kind of took me under his wing and taught me some of those skills, and it kind of stuck with me. So when I got into, I was a bowler to tell you the truth, when I was in 7th grade, I bowled like the Dickens. I still do. I can really hit the pins. But, you
throw a few turkeys?
Yeah, turkeys, yes.
That's my favorite, when the turkey comes on the screen.
I love that too. But, I had a new woman that came into town. She was an English teacher, and she became the basketball coach in 7th grade. And she then convinced the sister of this cousin of mine, so my same set of cousins, to get me out of bowling and get me on the basketball court. Okay. And I'm like, no, I'm not playing basketball. And of course I did. And well, if you saw a picture in my scrapbook of me, I was 2 heads taller than everybody else. I'm 6 foot tall. So here I am in the middle of this, group shot, and I'm way above everybody. But I really did excel, and really loved it, fell in love with it, and then just fell in love with all the sports. I was a state high jumper. Volleyball player. I broke a lot of records in running, track and field. So yeah.
What was your distance in running?
I did a 220, and I did a mile relay. Those were my 2 big things. I wasn't long distance. I don't care for that too much.
No. So what was your main sport at Easton? Did you have a scholarship, or you just kind of did it?
No, I got a scholarship. Yeah. It was basketball. All 4 years. Lettered, was a student athlete several times. I got an injury, unfortunately, my freshman year, so I didn't see a lot of play, which was a bummer for me. But it made me focus on my school and ended up doing really well. I mean, at my last semester, I was taking 18 credits and holding down basketball, just so I could get out of there.
Right. Now, did you have a great vision of what you wanted to be after college, or you just kind of fell into the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, you know what? I had a lot of really good talks with my grandmother over coffee. She was one of those ladies in the small community I grew up with who had really good coffee, and people loved to talk to her. And of course, her granddaughter was one of them. And she used to say, you'd be good in public relations or something like that. And I said, well, I'll think about it. And I really didn't my degree was in writing and marketing, and really didn't think about this. But a recruiter came to Eastern Michigan, and they were from the Boy Scouts. And the gentleman there interviewed me, and within a couple of days, I was being interviewed for a spot in Ann Arbor at the Boy Scout office, and landed the job almost immediately. And it was during a really difficult time. I graduated in 85, and that's when jobs were really hard. I know my parents were panicking. How am I going to find something? And boy, I really just lucked into it. And was there for 11 years between Ann Arbor and Detroit.
Okay. And so Boy Scouts was the first one.
Well, that was really the big one. And I was one of only 3 women in the United States that held a field director spot before I left. And talk about tough. I mean, nowadays it's, you see, I just saw where a young lady got her Eagle Scout, that would have been unheard of in the 80s. I mean, we were lucky to be a woman in that profession for the Scouts, for the Boy Scouts. So yeah, a lot of trailblazing.
Yeah. Now, is the Boy Scouts, is that nationally based in Ann Arbor?
Yeah, nope, it's nationally based out of Texas.
Okay.
Similar to like Ronald House, they have a global office in Texas. Ours is in Chicago. And they have like chapters, like we have chapters or councils, they call them. So yeah, it's almost the same formula.
So you were there 11 years.
11 years.
And, like anyone's first role, you kind of learn and you adapt. What were kind of a couple of lessons you think that helped you grow from the Boy Scouts?
Well, it's funny. When I was walking out the door, my spouse asked me about the mentor, and I told her who it was. And I said, and then I said, but the Boy Scouts really were the ones that formulated a lot of my skills. I mean, they're paramilitary. So you got to think everything, all that organizational skills, everything that you're doing I know you talk about the boys having to learn skills and do things. It's not much different with their professionals. I mean, they go through a 30-day training. They go through several trainings after that. It's really rigid. And I would say that I learned a lot of those organizational skills and perseverance skills from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to move on? Did you hit kind of a glass ceiling, or you just found a better opportunity?
Yeah, it was glass ceiling. They really wanted me to go run the Cub Scout program down in Texas. I didn't want to move. I hated to say goodbye because it was a good career. I then landed at the ACLU of all places, just the opposite side of Boy Scouts with their mission and that, but landed there, and that's where I really learned a lot of my development and fundraising skills. So I think the track has been perfect. So I no complaints there.
Right. Now, did you have that job lined up before you left, or you then left and found that
No,
job?
I actually have a really wonderful headhunter. He's in our area. He actually helped me land my last 4 jobs.
Okay.
He now helps as a board consultant for the Ronald McDonald House. So no, he was really tapped in and really knows me and knows my skill set and knew what to do.
All right. Now, you've worked in quite a few nonprofits, and kind of getting back to my first question of how you get some of those funds. I don't know if these are the most current statistics, but I think there's 1.2 million nonprofits in America.
All in Detroit. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, 40,000 in Michigan is what's registered with the IRS.
Yes.
But one thing that did surprise me, it said there was like over 400,000 employees of nonprofits, and that makes up 11% of Michigan's workforce.
Yeah.
And that's quite large, right?
It is quite large. And I say, when I think about, our fundraising in Metro Detroit or our community, if you look at galas, there's more galas in the city of Detroit or our area than there is in Los Angeles. So think about nonprofit galas and how much they raise. I mean, my counterpart in Ann Arbor does a wonderful job with the Red Shoe Ball, raises quite a significant amount of money at the big house in Ann Arbor, at the U of M Wolverines Michigan Stadium, excuse me. And we're tapping into a lot of the same markets. Yeah. And it's difficult.
Yeah. So sales is something I've done, and really, nonprofits is I see a lot of similarities. I mean, you're dressing it up, but ultimately it's sales. You're selling and promoting your business, and sales to me is just having conversations anyway. It's not about giving pitches. It's having conversations and seeing where there's synergy. Right. And one thing I liked, I know we talked briefly before the interview, is you talked about an example of a guy you met who left you some money.
Yes.
And it reminded me a lot when I started my business. I went to every networking meeting, everywhere you can, because you never know when you're going to meet someone. Yes. It's like, I've forgotten which band, maybe it might have been Bowie, but you hear bands who are like, it might have been Sting actually. Like, we showed up, there's 3 people in the audience, we played our gig anyway, and it turns out one of those 3 was the record guy that signed them. Wow. So, don't quote me, Sting, but I know it's someone famous that's happened to before.
Isn't that amazing?
So, tell the story about the guy at the putt-putt that you met.
About 12, 15 years ago, we had an organized event by the CBS marketing division. They helped us at the time. We had a board member on there, and it was Uncle Cracker who was the headliner at the time, and he was brand new out of the box. I didn't even know who he was. In fact, I'm like, who is Uncle Cracker? Well, now of course we love him, and so it's. This gentleman was there. He heard all the speeches. I think we had a family speak. Fast forward 15 years, and I get a call from the state of Michigan saying, well, there's a matter you need to take care of. And I'm like, okay, what kind of scam is this? And of course, we handed everything over to our investment advisors, and months went by and people were going through everything. And I get a phone call right square out of a meeting. I was over there on Stevenson Highway in Michigan here, and I was coming back from a meeting. They said, you need to pull over. And I'm like, now what happened? Investment advice, you need to pull over. And he's like, are you ready to hear this? And I'm like, well, what's going on? And he's like, the gentleman that left you the funds, it was all stock. It was Apple stock and BlackBerry stock. And he had passed away. He lived very modestly in a very small town near us, drove a 15-year-old car, and he left the Ronald House $1.2 million. And it was all because he heard us speak at this putt-putt golf those many years before that. So, I mean, you just never know. I mean, I had a staff member that used to say, give everybody a tour when they walk through the house, because you don't know who they are or what they could do down the future. And that's really the whole point of this, the communication with people and the impact it might have on somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know.
No.
You never know. So, a lot of people, I think, especially more these days, want a career that has a higher meaning, more altruistic. They want to come out of college and feel like they're making a difference. Yeah. So why is the nonprofit sector the right sector to go into for them? And what are some of the things you love about your industry?
Well, I think, if you think about nonprofit, I mean, I just hired, like I said, and I got a brand new staff. The entire staff is just about new except for one or two people. And a gentleman that I hired for my director of operations was a teacher and wanted to get out of that area and get out of the field and start something new. And I wasn't quite sure how to feel about that because I know we need teachers, but he has found a real niche. And I think this is what, for most of us, in helping people and having a purpose when you wake up. Not that the teachers don't, they do, but he now is in a new role and he really is finding his purpose in life. And sometimes it's just that one little jolt, right, that will get people so committed to the business that it makes the difference on everything that you're doing. So if you're just kind of lackluster and don't really care about what you're doing, you can get snapped into reality real quick when you see a little one walking down with, IVs and everything walking. I know it gets me even today, walking down the hall, and all of a sudden it just snaps you right back into reality that, you're really doing this for a purpose. Yeah. Yeah.
Now you've been there, 23 years?
23 years, yes. As long as the walls.
Right. I'm sure you do. What I was going to say, do you remember every family? I mean, obviously you have that connection. Does it stay with you? Do you able to kind of move on and still have them in a respectful place in your mind? Or do certain stories still really kind of get you to that?
There are so many good stories. I mean, there's one in particular that I use a lot because it just impacted me so much. There was a young man that was in the hospital with his mother and family and his grandmother. They stayed was at the old location. And he wasn't really critically ill, but he had, a situation where he could have snapped out of it, but was so depressed that he just was getting worse and worse. And at the time, I had a board member who was part of the Detroit Tigers. She was the community relations director. And I said, is there anything we can do? The kid loves baseball. Can he get a signed bat? I was just trying to think of anything that would snap this young man out of it. His grandmother was like, Jen, we need your help. We can't get Brandon to get out of this slump. And so I'm like, well, what is he like? And I was trying to think of all these things. The Detroit Tiger contact actually ended up saying, well, what about a player coming to visit him? I'm like, yeah. So next thing you know, it's Kurt Gibson. Okay. So on a Saturday morning, Kurt Gibson and his son come to the Ronald McDonald House of Detroit, and I'm there, and I'm just starstruck. I mean, this is the guy who you remember walking through the off the plate with his arm pumping, and I'm just like, oh my! And it was hard for me to even talk. Well, he goes into that hospital room, and he wouldn't let us in there. He said, "My son and I are going into this room." And I said, okay. So we all stood out, but we could see him in the window, and you could see him pumping his fist, and his hands moving and pointing at him, and you could just see he was giving some kind of a pep talk. Well, long story short, that young man was out of that hospital within a week. He is good friends now with both, our player and his son and us, and he's graduated from college, and Kirk and his son are still in contact with him, and he's healed, and it's one of the best stories I've ever had. So
is he mainly in for mental health issues?
No, it was a physical ailment that he, I think, and I always believe, your mental spirit and how you are conducting yourself, I think has a lot to do with your physical. I mean, if you're down in the dumps, you're not going to get better. And whatever Kirk said to him and his son, the son and Kirk, and he are all just really still in contact. And this has been probably 20 years. Yeah. So a great story.
Well, there's some things you do for mental health. Now, obviously, that's in the focus a lot. I mean, obviously, people come out of hard physical situations, and we like to highlight people who show great resiliency, but sometimes people need a helping hand out of the doldrums,
I think a lot of it with the Ronald McDonald House of Detroit, specifically because we're small. I know, everybody thinks we're real big. We're not. I mean, $1 million budget. We have, I have 17 total staff, but that's van drivers, that's consultants. I mean, the key 5 staff members that, including me, are very compassionate people. So if they see somebody struggling, they pull them into an office, they talk to them. They, see how they're doing. If they can't help them through a pep talk of their own, they get them hooked up with social workers. So I think that compassionate spirit that the staff has is really part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that maybe goes along with, I guess it's your motto or the Ronald McDonald House motto. One of the best things you can do is to be there and share.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that saying and what it means to you and the charity.
I think, we have a community out here in our Metro Detroit area that can come in and cook a meal for a family. And we usually during the holidays, we can't even find an empty spot. Somebody calls and says they want to cook a meal. Good luck. They'll get it in March if they call in December. I mean, sharing a meal with a family. We're trying to implement like some programs in the Ronald McDonald House, like karate for the kids or yoga. We're trying to expand our shuttle van service so that not only can we share our beautiful facility with the Children's Hospital folks, but all the folks that need it in our community. So I think that sharing spirit is just all of that.
Yeah.
And toys, they give house supplies. That's all sharing with the families that we serve.
Okay. So now, being there 23 years, I'm sure it's not all been smooth sailing.
Right.
So what were some of the challenges you faced and some of the tough times, and what did you do to kind of power through and get good results?
Well, I think, when I first got there, the board of directors was fractured. There was a situation where there was a disagreement about what happened before me, and that split that board in half. So we had half of the people, go Jen, the other half, who are you? Why did you come here? Why can't we have the old way? And so it took me a long time, probably 5 or 6 years to really straighten that out. I can remember going to global conferences, talking to counterparts about this exact topic. And they would be like, John, you just got to get your own board. You got to get the people that are, believe in the mission, the house, what the family is doing. You need to get them. You need to create your own culture, basically. Right. And we do it. We got one terrific board right now. The board of directors really just go-getters, help us raise these funds, help us get other new board members. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with a board member right after this potential one with the Illich Foundation downtown. So it's come a long way.
Yeah.
And so but that was rocky back then. It was really rocky.
Yeah, I mean, it seems a long time, 5 years. I mean, for someone to hold on. Were they holding on to the fact they liked the previous person's personality, or were you changing a lot of procedures and that freaked them out?
I think it was just something that happened that just split the board. I don't really know the details. It just was difficult because it was just like everybody liked the one person and they wanted to keep him. And you know how that is. I mean, sometimes that's hard, but I want him over.
But they couldn't get over it in a year and move on. They held on to it for a while.
Because you think about people who've been on a board for 5-6 years and they get used to doing something. Right. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, even with staff changes. I mean, some board members, were upset about some of the staff changes, but people leave. I mean, they go get new jobs. They, whatever, right? I mean, so yeah. That's personalities.
Yeah. Yeah. So in a way, you've got two management jobs. You manage your staff, and then you manage your board.
Well, the board manages me, but yes, I do have to manage the board.
Well, you have to manage up to an extent.
Absolutely.
But yes, sure.
Yes, we work collectively. I mean, I report to the board, and they keep my feet to the fire. Let's put it that way, but in a really good way.
Yeah. So, with keeping the feet to the fire, non-profits have goals to accomplish. And how does that go about in terms of do numbers get raised every single year regardless, or pat on the back, or how does that work?
There was only 1 year, and it was right before COVID, interestingly enough, that we weren't going to meet budget, and that scares me because I'm very oriented to goals and meeting goals and exceeding goals. And so through those 23 years, there's only been really one difficult year. And I think it was 19 or 18. And I'm not sure what happened. Who knows? Yeah. But we, got good board members that came and got creative with fundraising, and we bounced right back.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now back to Dr. Audrey Evans. I mean, her story is kind of one fighting against like the glass ceilings, or especially back in the 50s. back in my country, England, that's where she's from, and she went to she was the only woman who studied at the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. The rest of her class were men, and then she went to the Boston Children's Hospital. She worked with Sidney Farber, who's regarded as the father of chemotherapy, and then went to Johns Hopkins, and she took all this amazing knowledge back to England.
Yeah.
And then my country was like, we're not going to give you such great positions because you're a woman. So she's like, I'm going back to America.
Yeah.
And that's when she went to Chicago and Philadelphia. I mean, reading about her story was amazing. Is her story well told in your charity, or she's just more of a figurehead?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk history, we talk Dr. Evans, we talk Fred Hill. I mean, it's, people that are like the founders. I mean, even with McDonald's, I mean, we are very tied to that central theme of our founders and those who helped us get this off the ground. We wouldn't be here without Dr. Evans. So yes, she is a very strong figure in our overall charity.
Now, I know she passed last year at 97.
Yes.
Did you ever get to meet her in your 23 years? I
never did, but I know the Global Office did a beautiful tribute to her, and they did some nice gatherings to honor her memory, and did a beautiful video. I can remember being so moved by it. She just was a trailblazer, truly, on every level.
Was she pretty involved in the last 20 years, or just kind of retired?
She kind of retired, and the Global Office would use her for different speaking engagements and stuff like that. But yeah, she did her service for us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I know the Global Office, you have kind of a North American meeting once a year.
Yes.
And is that something you would like to go into, the Global Office? Are you happy kind of staying here in Detroit?
Nope, I'm going to stay here. I have a couple, 2-3 more years. I'm trying to groom staff to maybe possibly take over if they want to. But I've built a real good Ronald McDonald House Charities here in Detroit. I want that to be left in good hands. I only want what's going on now to continue and improve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you've got pretty much a whole new staff.
Yes.
Staff turnover is normal. Is there any kind of times with staff over the 23 years where maybe you feel you've got it wrong with a certain employee, or how have you honed your management over 23 years of people?
So for 20 of those years, I never lost one staff member.
Okay.
All right. Not one. I mean, I know that's mind-boggling, because the average stay for directors is about 6 or 7 years in the Ronald McDonald Charities.
So all your employees had worked like
they
10
had
plus
stayed.
years?
Oh, well,
Okay.
2 of them, one's still with me. I think is going into 30 years, Irma. But my house manager was there for 24 years. My event director was there for like 20 years. The people that were there the senior staff, health issues, just time to retire. I knew that day was coming, and I dreaded it because I'm not much of a change agent. But I have found that these new people that I've hired have just so much energy and mission orientation. I've never seen so much mission orientation other than myself. They really just want to help the families any which way they can. And they're constantly thinking about how to do it, and out of the box thinking, which is exactly what I needed at this very moment.
Yeah.
You get stale, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So they brought some new energy to you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, losing those key staff was very difficult for me. I think it was the summer of 21 or 2. I guess it would have been 22. Last year and the year before, it was very difficult for me to kind of get off the spot and figure out the new plan and to pivot. And they've helped me to pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's some of the out-of-the-box thinking they've produced for you?
Oh, my goodness. Like reaching out to, different counties, different McDonald's in different counties, which we may not have thought of, more of the northern tier, the Thumb area, which, is our service area. But, we sort of mingle here in the city. This shuttle van service actually came out of something that was, we were supposed to get one of those Caramobiles, and it didn't happen. And so the pivot was, let's try to figure out how we can get more families in the house. And it actually came from my new staff. They were like, well, we have some contacts in the automobile industry. Let's see if we can get a shuttle van. And they did it. I mean, they just came up with it, and then we rolled with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing we haven't touched on too much, but the world experienced it the past few years, is COVID. Yeah. And being a house, being where people had to be together, and obviously you have children in the hospital. How did you make it through COVID? What were some of the impacts?
Well, we had 7 families when the pandemic hit, and pretty much the global office said that nobody except for 1 or 2 essential people should be at the house. So no volunteers. We lost all our meal preparation. Okay, couldn't bring meals in. You remember that. They had to be sheltered in their rooms, which was really difficult because the common area of a Ronald McDonald house is the kitchen. And that's where all the magic happens. Families come together around food, talk about their family situation, talk about their child's illness. And so, losing that and having everybody be in a little room was very difficult. And we had 7 of those families. 1 was from Philadelphia, 1 was from Jamaica, a couple were local, but it took 4 months before we could send them home. It was very difficult.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, why did they end up in Detroit? If Philadelphia's got a house and a hospital, I mean, Jamaica maybe.
The specialties. Yeah. The family from Jamaica actually had some very extensive facial surgeries, and it was going to be a year as it was because of these extensive surgeries. And then COVID hit, then tacked on another 4 months. Yeah. So.
I imagine a lot of the families that are there together, they form lifelong friendships, right?
Yes, absolutely. We have a lot of families that keep in touch with each other, keep in touch with us. So yeah, it's natural. Families that go through a very stressful time, they bond together with each other and they have lifelong relationships.
Yeah. Now, are there many instances where unfortunately the child doesn't make it? And how do you care for people in that situation?
Yeah, that was one of the main concerns my sister had when I took this job. She's like, Jen, I don't know how you're going to deal with sick families, the sick children and people that pass or young people that pass. And I'm like, I'll be all right. And I actually asked that question in my interview, if I recall. And they were like, the good news is there's more happy stories than sad. And yes, right. There's going to be. And my staff, again, with the compassion and care that they have, they take good care of those people when that kind of a situation happens. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, death and grief is something that we as a society don't like to talk about. There's a good college friend of mine, unfortunately, his son passed at 10 months.
Oh, God.
And that kind of forced him into starting a charity, and he's run that charity for 10 years in England. It's quite a large charity now and does a great job, and it's focused on helping families of who've lost a child.
Yes.
And a support network in there. What would be some advice, I guess, for friends of people who've lost a child? How should they reach out? How should they deal with people in uncomfortable situations? Because I think a lot of times people maybe don't know what to say, so they say nothing.
Yeah, I think you just, make sure that they know that you're there for them, check in with them. Sadly, I lost a great nephew last November to a very tragic car accident. And my niece is having a very difficult time. It's going to be November here, a year coming up. And, I just make sure that I check in. I'm here. I listen. I think that's the most important thing, is to listen and to make sure that you're observing what's going on with that person. Because if you can see that they're going into a slump or into a situation where they're not bouncing back, you need to be there to give them that listening ear and that shoulder. I think that's the most important thing. Just let people know that you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people stay in touch with the house, afterwards. And there's a lot of aftercare.
It was interesting. I had a grandparent, a grandmom and granddad come in, and they had lost their grandson recently, and he'd been at the Ronald House in Detroit for a few months before, and now she wants to do fundraisers. But you could just see the grief with that woman and trying to find any way she could to keep her grandson's spirit alive. And so she's going to do it by fundraising for the Ronald House. And I've seen that a lot. That's a really big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, people want to give back.
So you hinted possibly about succession and someone taking your place. Do you have a timeline for that?
I know, people have been asking me already since COVID.
I'm not trying to get you out of there.
No. Probably 3-4 more years. That would give my staff some time to get themselves together and really know it like I know it. And succession planning is important. I mean, you don't want to just leave an organization you've been with high and dry. You want to leave them in very good hands. And if I were to walk away right this moment, I know they would be in good hands, but they need a little more in the incubator.
Right. And then
they need a little more time in the oven.
And then is it potential retirement or just onto different projects?
No. I probably will do a semi-retirement thing and do some consulting. I absolutely love the fundraising and the management aspect of stuff, and I think that might be a route I would take. I'm not going to fill up every single minute of my day, otherwise I'd stay at the house. But something to keep me, in the game, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Now, if you did go into semi-retirement, I'm sure you've got some other passions, and I found one online that's probably starting to ramp up right about now.
Okay.
Which may mean I may have to drive by your house in late October. You do
good research.
I was quite surprised. Do you want to tell us what that passion might be?
Oh my goodness. So I actually am a huge Halloween fan, and been highlighted probably that's where you saw it in the Detroit News and Free Press. I think 3 or 4 times. I got the placards in my basement of me on the front page of the, accents of Detroit News or Home and Garden with me and my ghouls. We have a yard filled with just really cool Halloween stuff. It's not your stuff from Spirit Halloween. I make my things, most of them. This year's a little different. Somebody gifted us last year the 12-foot skeleton. Okay. Which I'm okay with. You're looking up at the ceiling. Yeah, this is that big. And then I was gifted a 12-foot Jack Skellington and then a 12-foot witch. So now I do have a lot of mechanicals. But my highlight this year is the Bride of Frankenstein, which I built. She's on a... the bride is in her gown and she's on a pedestal. And I have 4 key Hollywood monsters from the old days. Okay. I got their life masks of the actactors from the 30s, where Bela Lugosi and such, and painted them and made them into their characters: Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, and the werewolf. And they're all the real life cast face of these, and they're on full-size mannequins, and they're going to all be around the bride. Frankenstein will be right in the middle.
Right, yeah.
But that will be the highlight of my yard. And yes, lots of people, lots of attention. It's about a 14-hour setup. I usually take a day off and then tinker and tweak for the next 2 weeks. And then I have a giant party. This year it's the 14th, where people can come and have some good food and drinks and throw a donation in the box. And I've raised, last year I raised $25,000 from that party.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's kind of a labor of love for both my Halloween and the house.
Right. When did this start?
Oh my gosh. I was back in Milan, just fresh out of college, and just started doing some ghouls on the porch. And it was actually Nightmare Before Christmas.
Okay.
I love that show. I saw it with my nephew, who's now married and on his own, but he was a little boy, and I can remember him on my lap watching it at the little theater up in mid-Michigan, and he loved it. I fell in love with it, and I started carving out of wood the characters of the Jack Skellington crew, Nightmare Before Christmas. And so I had those to begin with, and people were just amazed. They were like, "Oh, where can we get those?" And I'm like, "I make those." So yeah, and this year I decided to do the bride. I don't know why.
Yeah. Is it a year-long process? You kind of on
sometimes
weekends?
The bride took a couple of weekends. I put her together, and it was fun. I took pictures. I always take a pre-picture, like in the middle of summer, and get everybody ready.
Right.
But we recently moved from Pleasant Ridge to Huntington Woods. And my biggest fear was our neighbors are going to hate us. I mean, everybody in Pleasant Ridge for 17 years could not wait for our Halloween display. And kids would start riding their bikes, and parents pushing them in cars in early September asking when I was going to decorate. And I'm like, not for another 20 days or 30 days. And I wasn't sure how it would be in Huntington. And I've gotten just the same exact welcome from people. Little ones, big ones, everybody loves it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we love it. Well, I like it when other people do it because that means I don't have to do it. And then I just take the kids somewhere else.
That's right.
Say, look at all their work.
Well, you definitely need to come on by.
Is there a set day that starts, like October 1st? Is that the day you put
I think
them
I
up,
blocked off the 22nd or 23rd, and we have a young man that comes and helps us. We pay him because I can't. I'm getting to the point where I'm not going to be able to haul those things out much longer. So hopefully I have a few more years in me to get it set up.
Where do you store that stuff? In the garage?
We have a nice little shed, and everything is organized perfectly. Okay. Otherwise it won't fit in.
Are you a bit of a neat freak, would you say?
Not me. No. I'm not. I'm a bit of a hoarder.
Right.
So my better half takes care of the organization of it all. So
I can see that.
Yes.
I can see that. Well, is there anything that I've left out that maybe you think people should know about the Ronald McDonald House?
You know what? We're open 365 days, 7 days a week. We're never closed. I mean, we shut the front office from 9 to 6, but we really need people's support. I mean, whether it's a $10 donation to cooking a meal to $1 million donation, whatever it is, we'll take it. And we will make sure that we use that for those families we serve. We serve 1,500 families a year, and they're from all over the United States and the world. I've had people from our very first family was from Ireland, and another family right after that was from Russia. So we serve a lot of families, and we just whatever the community wants to do to help us, we will take the help. So and from little to big. So.
That was big. Well, I appreciate it, Jennifer. I learned a lot more about the charity, and it's great to hear your energy driving it forward. And 10 years from now, as you leave the house or whenever it is, what would you hope is the overarching theme of your legacy there?
Boy, I sure hope that they say that there was a lot of positive change, a lot of good programs were put in, and that the house was a lot better after I left than when I came. And that staff members were happy and families are well served and children taken care of.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.